Welcome to the Growth in Life virtual mentoring series. Today's installment is on taking control of feeling overwhelmed. Our speakers today are Petite Queen co-founders Tina.
Hello.
And myself. And our Director of Operations and Communications, Rachel.
Hello.
Completes our panel. Today, we will learn how to move forward. I will start with this slide. This is Lynn, and this year I've had to cope with feeling overwhelmed quite a bit. Both my father and husband died this year. With each, I felt that I had no control over what was happening. It has seemed that there was so much to do and that so many new responsibilities have been added to my plate. Feeling out of control feeds the sense of being overwhelmed. Experiencing disappointments or defeat can generate similar intense feelings. When a series of unfortunate events happens in quick succession, it's like a weight of bricks. All of these feelings impact your perception of being able to take charge of your own destiny. So, in a nutshell, it's like all this crap keeps happening to you. So, Rachel, what are your thoughts on why we feel overwhelmed?
Well, I think you covered a lot of the really important issues of, things just keep piling up and sometimes you feel like there's no way out. And I think the one thing I really want to relate on this slide, I think a very important point is that feelings of being overwhelmed are incredibly common and they happen to everyone. So if you are feeling overwhelmed by what's happening in your life, just remember that you're not alone in that, and everyone has felt that way or will feel that way at some point in their lives, and most of us get through it. So how about you, Tina? What would you like to add?
I think that's a really good point, Rachel, that everyone at one point or another experiences feeling overwhelmed or feeling out of control or feeling that there's just too much on one's plate. And I think it's how we address that, and understanding as well that that you're not alone. Individuals are not alone, and that there are ways to take baby steps into and to perhaps address that, which I think should lead us into our next slide. Most of the time when we're feeling overwhelmed, it's that we're not in control of something. And so when we have a full plate, I think it's important to take a step back and figure out a way of what you can control. For me, I stop and I breathe in and I hold for a count, and then I breathe out, and I do that several times just to try to calm myself down and get myself more in the moment instead of jumping out ahead of myself. I can be in control of my breathing. Perhaps sometimes I'll take a walk outside just to get some fresh air and just kind of clear my mind a little bit, and then come back and try to realize that as many items as there may be on the plate or in my head of all the things that need to get done or that are not getting done is just one thing that I can do, that I have control over, that I can check off of a list. And I break things down. And I give myself permission not to get everything done at one time, but to understand that there's just, at any given point in time, we all have a certain bandwidth. And whether it be what's on our plate that we've put there ourselves, or in Lynn's case, her personal circumstances that have taken a turn that she has absolutely no control over, we need to break things down and take it step by step. And those would be baby steps, those things that we can take control of. Lynn?
Thank you, Tina. I've made it through these life-changing events this year by following these tips that we've got up here. I take the tasks and put them into, the bigger picture and try to put it into chunks, manageable pieces. And one piece of advice I'm going to say is that I'm going to reiterate what Rachel said is that, you know, you have to remember that you will get through tough times. You know, all of us face challenges and hard times that we have to move forward through. And so surround yourself as much as possible with people and things that lift up your spirits. Wear colors that make you feel good and happy. Make the time for friends and family to talk and ask for help. I mean, that goes right into here for asking for advice. So, you know, when you have this, you know, a lot of things that you have to deal with, you know, break down the task, prioritize what's you've got to get done first, and ask for help. Rachel?
Tina, I really liked one thing that you, well, I liked everything that you said here, but one thing in particular really spoke to me, which was your statement of giving yourself permission not to finish everything all at once. And I think giving yourself permission to do that is a big part of taking back control over what you see as an overwhelming situation. Because sometimes you feel like it's do everything or don't do anything at all, and it's never that case. And so when you do break things down, that really helps you out. And also asking for advice is very important. But I believe that you're going to get further into that on your next slide, Tina. Is that right?
I am. Mm-hmm.
Take it
So
away.
let's talk about it, and thank you for that. Thank you very much, Rachel, for finding resources. So everything in the universe is not resident within ourselves. There are other people out there that can and will and may have suggestions or information or something to help. If you can identify what it is that would be useful for you, and again, that's a control. Whether what I need, I want, is what would be helpful for me? What would be helpful? That's more of taking back the control. What would be helpful for me to address XYZ, whatever is on my plate? Who might be able to be out there to help me? Or who do I know that might have been going through something similarly? There may be a support group. There may be a business networking group. There might be something online that provides some resources. Our friends, our family, we all have, I think, at this stage in our lives, have determined a certain support network in and of itself, that where we know to go, or to go to ask where to go for help, if you will. But it's all taking little baby steps. And again, whatever is helpful for you in a particular situation, in my opinion, that's the best way to approach things. Rachel, what do you think of that?
I think you're exactly right. Knowing what you need to know is the very first step. Before you can ask anyone for help, you need to know what you need to ask. And I think that's very important when it comes to finding resources. So just take a step back and look at the things that you don't know that you would need to know to go forward, and then hop onto the interwebs and find out, or talk to somebody that you know who either knows what who you think knows what you need to know, or you believe would know someone who knows what you need to know, if that doesn't get a little too meta. How about you, Lynn? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to start with, you know, sometimes it's hard to ask for help. It can feel awkward and uncomfortable, even when it's family and close friends. And when they offer to help, you might decline so as not to be a burden. Or harder still, they don't offer to help, and you have to initiate that request. When I ask for help, I make sure that the person I'm asking knows I understand if they don't have the bandwidth to pitch in. Giving them an easy out and making sure that they're comfortable with the request for assistance. So, you know, that's a piece of advice that I can give so that you can find it in yourself that yeah, it's okay for me to ask for help. It's absolutely okay for me to ask for help, and this is a way I can do that. And on the flip side, I genuinely offer to help when I sense my family and friends are in distress, I look for ways I can, um, even with small gestures like sending flowers or thoughtful notes. And so I think that we always have to be ready, on the flip side, so that we're also that support for other people. So we're giving back, and it's a two way street in that sense. So, Rachel, I know that if we're ready to move forward, you're doing the next slide.
I am indeed reframing your perspective. So we've alluded to it a little bit, well, actually quite a bit throughout this presentation, and that's when you experience failure or a defeat or a setback. It's really easy to get caught up in your emotions and get caught up in the details. And you allow yourself sometimes to, you allow those feelings to take over and you feel like you can't see any way out. All you can see is the setback. And at this point, it's to harken back to the advice that Tina gave a couple of slides ago. It's good to take a step back and breathe, and take a step back and just remove yourself slightly from the situation. Take the time to throw yourself a little pity party if you need one, but then after that's done, take a step back and review the process that you just went through to reach what you consider to be not the ideal outcome. At this point, you review all the steps that you went through with fresh eyes, and you find ways that you can improve the outcome if you go through this process again. You focus on the things that you did wrong, not to criticize yourself, but to find ways to grow. And after that, you can also focus on what you learned through the process. And sometimes you learned that, when you speak to someone in this tone, it doesn't work out. Other times you might learn how to ask for help, which Lynn spoke to just a moment ago. You learn how to comfort yourself, and that's a really good skill to have. And you learn how strong you are because you lived through that defeat and you're still standing and you're still ready to move forward. And sometimes you can just focus on those lessons because those are not invaluable lessons. But you can also focus on the more concrete lessons by looking at the steps you took through this process. What are your thoughts, Lynn?
Right on the money there. I mean, and I think the only thing I would add is sometimes you need a break. We've talked about that, and you need to take it. You're no good to anyone, including yourself, if you don't make time, to relax and regroup. Tina talked about stopping and breathing and controlling her breathing. It can be that. It can be, as she said, go for a walk. For me, getting a coffee, watching a video, whatever helps you to recharge. That helps me reframe my perspective. Tina, how about you?
So I like a couple of things that you've both said, and I think Rachel, you had related to a pity party or something. I mean, sometimes we just need to stop and say, okay, things are just too much, and allow ourselves, again, give ourselves permission to acknowledge that and maybe stay there for a little while. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger is a saying that you hear a lot out there. And boy, once you get through a very difficult time, there's not a truer statement that you are definitely stronger. But I'll tell you what works for me sometimes is just acting as if. I'm acting as if I have complete control over everything. I act as if something is done on one side and I'm moving on to something else. And just, it's a way to compartmentalize, reframing the perspective, to Rachel's point, and I love the way that this is said, reframing your perspective. For me, sometimes it's compartmentalizing all of those different things that need to get done and just focusing on one and acting as if all the rest of them are gone. And then once that's off my plate, then I can go and I can start reprioritizing and taking a look at the others. But certainly once we get past all of this and the lessons learned, and how can we help ourselves not to get into a similar situation in the future, or how can we if it does happen or something similar happens again, what have I learned? What helped me the most? And what tools now what additional tools do I have in my personal toolkit to address these items as they come up and these challenges? Lynn?
Yeah, that's great. And I think that we're ready to move on to affecting outcomes. And Rachel, would you like to take the lead on this slide?
Of course. So after we've taken the moment to look at the process that we just discussed over our last slide, after you look at the process and learn your lessons, it's time for you to create a game plan to move forward, to try again or try something new, depending on what you decide. And when you do make that plan, you need to make sure that the plan has clear steps. You need to make sure that you know who to ask. Creating a plan is important. Preparation is key for any project. And so you need to make sure that you know exactly what you're going to do, and if you need help, exactly who you will ask. And so that takes some preparation to get to your game plan, and be flexible with it. When I say that you need to know exactly which steps, I don't mean that those steps are set in stone, but you have a solid outline of what you're going to do, and that's going to make you feel like you have a lot more control. And I talked about it a little bit before, is breaking down your project into steps. So sometimes the task seems incredibly daunting because it's a big thing, but you can always break it down into smaller steps. For example, finding a new apartment, that is a scary thing. But if you can start creating a list of things that you need to do, maybe start by looking online at apartments in the area that you want to live in. Then maybe you can figure out what you can afford. Then maybe you can research realtors in that area who might help you. Each of those is a lot smaller and easier to accomplish than just finding a new apartment, because that's scary. And another thing to remember is that sometimes what's holding us back from completing our plans is our own selves. Sometimes we can get it into our heads that we can't do something, or we're not good enough at something to accomplish what we want to do. And that can be difficult to get out of, but it is something that you need to make sure you do get out of. And I don't want to make it sound like it's an easy thing necessarily, because it's not easy for everyone. So find the help that you need to do it if you do need help. But you do need to snap out of that mindset and admit that even if you don't have that skill, you can learn it. And you have to allow yourself permission to learn that skill. Find resources to help you learn what you need to learn, do what you need to do, and allow yourself to do it. Be confident in your own ability to learn, because life is a learning process, and we all start out not knowing everything. Um, and none of us will ever know everything, but we keep learning new skills to help ourselves get through each task as they come to us. Tina, what do you think about that?
I think you have some really great points there, Rachel. The having an affect or an influence on ourselves and on creating positive outcomes is an effective or the best way of guiding ourselves and showing our strength. I think that when we have a game plan and we stick with that game plan, but we also know that every now and then there's going to be some changes. We have to be able to we have to be able to weave and wobble and be able to be so dynamic and so flexible in our approach, and try to keep things as light and not as stay in the lightness of all of these feelings. Stay in the lightness of being able to grow, being able to work with all of this, being able to learn, as opposed to being dark and in the shadows and trying not to face them. I think that everything here that the three of us have been talking about is the acknowledgement that yes, there's going to be some just terrifically difficult times in all of our lives, in different areas of our lives, and it's the manner in which we address them that shows our true metal. Lynn?
I like what we said, and I'm going to add that even when you have a plan and you've broken the tasks into manageable components, certain aspects will go sideways. And
Mm-hmm.
Both of you, Rachel and Tina, alluded to that. This is just how life works.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes those detours can be really wonderful. So, you have to stay flexible and recognize that some of those surprises are really good. So I think now we're going to go ahead and segue, if we're good, to our next section, because this is perfect opportunity to say celebrate and appreciate. Hopefully, from my experiences in the first slide that I talked about and shared, you'll recognize that when I say bad things happen to good people, I really mean it. Um, and as I've said, all of us go through hard times. And what sets us apart and helps us through, these challenges, these trials and tribulations, it's recognizing our own strength. So summon your inner Kim Possible attitude of she can do anything. Acknowledge, your power to accept the challenge or challenges and just vanquish every obstacle. You need to really just throw a party for every triumph, large and small. It's powerful and amazing to realize your victories. It builds your resilience and ability to move forward with purpose. So, Tina, how do you celebrate and appreciate your triumphs?
Well, thank you, Lynn. Okay. It can be as small as going up and giving my dog a big hug, Mr. Fritz a hug, and telling him what a great job he's doing and being a good coach for me. It can be patting myself on the back. It can be taking myself out for a walk, or taking myself out for a nice meal, or a cocktail or two. That's how I celebrate. And I do try to show self-appreciation. Some days are better than others. Some days are easier than others, obviously. But I do like to cheer the small triumphs throughout the day. Rachel?
I love your statement about giving Mr. Fritz a hug. That's so cute. I think we all like to
Baby.
give our pets hugs. Although sometimes you give them a hug when you're not feeling great either. Pets are very
Right.
useful.
That's also
Wonderful.
very helpful. Yeah.
Yes.
It's got me
But
through.
oh yeah. But when I celebrate, sometimes it's going out for ice cream. Sometimes it's just, hey, I accomplished this one small task. I'm going to give myself a 15-minute break to watch something on YouTube or whatever it is. Just chill for a few minutes because I did a thing, and that's important. And sometimes it's as simple as reminding myself that I did that. So after I finished writing a research proposal, it took me months to write that dumb thing. And then at the end, I just had to stop and remind myself, you wrote a really good research proposal. You worked really hard on that for a really long time, and you did a good job. And that's a powerful thing to remind yourself of. Sometimes I call my mom or my sister or whomever to tell them, hey, I did a thing. And at that point, I get to have a little mini celebration for a couple of minutes with someone that I know loves and appreciates me. And then I think the first bullet point here about recognizing your strengths is also very powerful because, as we've mentioned, we all go through these trials and tribulations, and I've been through them myself, struggling with depression and death of a parent, etc. And at that point, you learn these skills as you go through the struggles. And one of my skills is that I can endure a lot. I can admit when I can't handle something, and I can ask for help. And I have survived every single trial so far, and I've succeeded at every single one so far, and I see no reason why I won't triumph in the future. And that's an important thing to recall. And that's my closing thought on this slide.
And we celebrate you, Rachel.
Oh, thank you.
Yay.
I celebrate you too.
All right. Well, thank you so much to all of our members and guests who joined us for this installment of Growth in Life Virtual Mentoring Series, and for being part of the dialogue here at Petite Queen. If you have a question or would like to suggest topics for discussion, please email us at jointheconversation@petitequeen.com.